Individually and in community, we are faced with many questions throughout our lives. Among those questions, we might ask, how do we navigate the perplexing challenges of times of change and transition?
Is God calling our congregation to do more or to be more than who we are?
I've been asked to take a special responsibility at work. I know I can do the job, I've got the skills, but is it really something that I want to do?
Should I make that move?
Do we build or do we rent?
Who are we called to become?
These are all questions that I would bring to God in discernment. These are the big questions where there are no easy answers. And so I want to invite God into that process.
The word discern or discernment comes to us in English from the 14th century and meaning to separate, to distinguish, to sift. To me, it's even more about a way of life. It's the way we look and listen and see and hear.
Discernment is a process of sifting through all those choices that are part of our life, whether they be large or small, and finding those connection points between what it is that we are the most equipped to do, the things that we feel the most passion for, and those things that God might be inviting us to do. Those places where God is already at work in the world, perhaps. How can we connect those two pieces together and make good decisions among all of the good decisions that are in front of us?
Discernment begins with the phrase, I don't know. I don't know. And unless we can begin in that place, discernment really doesn't happen. It's an acknowledgement that we do not know. We do not have all the answer. We do not have all of the truth.
Another important foundation of discernment is the practice of spiritual freedom, which is about cultivating a stance of availability to God's presence at every moment of life.
In discernment, it is very important for us to release as much as possible that preferred outcome, at least for just a little while, because it's always possible that God is in the midst of that decision, ready to surprise us with something we may have never considered before.
We are asked to step back and pay attention. What are the things in my life that might be crowding out God's bigger vision? When might my agenda or priorities be getting in the way of some new possibility that I have not yet even imagined that God is dreaming in me or in my community? The practice of spiritual freedom is about releasing those things that keep us from being totally open and available to God at every moment of life.
For me, discernment is about asking what God wants for me in every possible moment and trusting that what God does want for me is the best possible thing in that moment. And it's about being open to that potential and that possibility for the future and trusting that my part in that plays into God's larger vision for all of creation.
An important foundation of discernment is the reality that God is present in all things, in every single part of life, and in every moment we ever find ourselves in.
So much of our Christian life is about knowing the balance of being and doing. When I look at the life of Jesus, for example, I think about phrases like dying unto self. I think about Jesus' sojourn in the wilderness where he asked the most difficult questions. And it was about reacting or acting in compassion, in sensitivity, in risk, in vulnerability, which is so often not the response that we make. I look to Jesus in that process of discernment.
Discernment is the practice of habitually orienting our whole selves towards God's movement and invitation in all things. Discernment is a critical practice of a prophetic people. We are called to co-create the future with God in literally every single part of life, from the small decisions that we make day to day to the big decisions that shape the way that we grow and form and respond in the world as a community of Christ. This is the important task of a people that are open to God's presence and invitation in every single part of life. Are we really listening? Do we really believe in a God that is still active and present and moving in our lives and in the lives of everyone that we encounter?